Welcome back to the Waves Business Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Karnes. This week on the podcast, I host Andrew Amerson. Andrew is a seasoned storyteller and marketing strategist. He spent 9 years at North Point Ministries as their director of digital media. And so he learned how to, work with nonprofits there at one of the world's largest nonprofit organizations. He now works with both Fortune 500 companies such as Jaguar Land Rover, Amazon, as well as nonprofits to help them tell better stories. He does a lot of video-led marketing, but kind of does the full creative suite. We have an incredible conversation about storytelling, what he learned from North Point Ministries in the area of storytelling, and what both Fortune 500 companies and nonprofit organizations can learn from each other and how to be better storytellers. We get into some music and how music is a form of storytelling and what some of the best storytellers in the world do well that your business can do well this week to replicate it. I read a book called Master Your First Job. It is the remarkable path from first day to first promotion. This is the book that every young employee needs and every employer wishes they have read and want them to have. If you know someone or lead someone who needs a copy of this book, I'd love to give you one for free. You can go to masteryourfirstjob.com/free. That's masteryourfirstjob.com/free and get a free digital copy of this book. And if you're like me and you like to highlight and a dog ear and hold a paper book in your hand, there's a link to buy that on there as well. But if you want the free copy, don't hesitate to go to masteryourfirstjob.com/free and get a free copy of the book. Let's dive into my conversation and interview with Andrew Amerson. Andrew, thanks so much for being on the Waves Business Coaching Podcast. I'd love for you to share a little bit about you and your story.
Man, Jacob, I'm so glad to be here. You came down to the studio I'm in a couple of weeks ago and we had a blast getting to talk. So just getting to continue that is going to be great. Yeah, so I am Andrew or Drew Amerson, whichever. And I run a company here in Atlanta, Georgia called Tree City Creative. So we do marketing work. I call us a video-led marketing company. So we're very long on the video equipment and we do a lot of shoots where we go in and are, coming up with kind of a content strategy for maybe a year out and planning that out and then shooting it over a day or two. So we try to be a solution for companies who just want to, that's not the main thing they're focused on. Maybe they have a small marketing team or maybe no marketing team and we're kind of coming in as that. So we do a lot of that. And then all the way up to we work with even some big companies, your Amazons, Land Rovers. We do that with some of our partners. A lot of times we'll kind of combine together. And then we also do some work in the event space too. We do some live events, galas and things like that. So fundraising events, that sort of thing. So a lot of times we're not like a full production company. We will produce events, but we do it more where if we're building the content on the front end so that they can just have a seamless service all the way up until their event. So they've got all their videos made, all their graphics done, and then we're there on the night to help run the production and make sure it goes smoothly. That's kind of what we do, if it makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. And like personally, I know you're married, have an 8-year-old, one kid, right?
8-year-old. He just started third grade, which is crazy because it's only July 23rd today, I think, 24th.
Yeah.
And he's already back in school. So he started yesterday. Yep.
Third grade. I have a 3-year-old and a 3-week-old, and I can't fathom third grade. So,
and everybody tells you and you just don't know it until it happens. But it's just, we're in that phase right now, sending him into third grade where you're like, what, how is this happening? But it
blink.
It just goes, the days are long, but the years are short, as I say, so
that's right.
That's been true for us, the whole step, but you really see it on these milestone kind of achievements of, moving up a grade or finishing a grade or whatever, holidays. It just makes you feel, like it's flying by, and it is.
So some more connection we have, and I feel like some question might come from this too, is we're involved with Story Brand. So like we kind of connected through there. We're in Atlanta. We connected through there. And then also like I've grown up with my dad working in ministry. My wife worked in ministry, and not just ministry, but now we're attending a North Point church. I know you had some past with North Point Ministries as well. So we've got several connecting dots there.
Yes. Quite a few. Yeah. Cause we had a lot of friends. We went to breakfast together a while ago and half of it was just talking about who we knew in common. I think.
That's right. So, okay, before I dive in, I have a question about North Point, but I read a book called Master Your First Job. I'd love to know, what was your first job?
So my first, I'll give you two because one was kind of like a summer job. My very first was working summers at a vineyard where we grew, this is a very Southern thing, but we grew scuppernons and muscadines. I don't know if you've ever had those, but we would
Neither.
grow those. All right, I'm going to get you some next time.
Okay.
But they're basically like a grape with very thick skin. So you kind of like bite a little hole in that thick skin and squeeze the rest out.
Interesting.
It's kind of like a grape. They're really good. But I guess we would ship them all over the place. And in some places it's like a delicacy to make some dessert that's based around these plants that people haven't heard of, but it's just think grape. There's like black and green varieties, or at least there's probably more than that, but that's what we were working with. So I did that. And then I worked at a garage / full service gas station was my first like real job. So I used to, pump gas, do oil changes, do tires, do, any kind of basic maintenance on cars. We would clean cars. I mean, we did a little bit of everything. So probably why I still do a little bit of everything now, even with the company. So things carry over,
Full service gas station. It's funny. I'm like, I don't think you're that much older than me, but I'm like, I don't even know if I've ever seen a full service gas station, which
it's probably not that anymore. And even at the time, you didn't see a lot of them.
Yeah.
This was like a small town phenomenon. It had been that for a long time, and it just kind of stuck around. So Griffin, Georgia is where I grew up. So
cool.
We were, he held out and kept doing pumping the gas for folks for a long time.
I love it. Tree City Creative, your company. I'm like, I hear creative. Usually I think about digital media, right?
Yes.
Like when I hear creative. So like, and you said video-led marketing, like got a big video department, graphics and the storytelling. Story Brand is a network we're both involved in.
Exactly.
I have a question about North Point connecting to this. So I am always fascinated because I think North Point's one of the best organizations in the world.
Fantastic.
Filled with one of the best some of the best communicators in the world. I think Andy's one of the best communicators in the world, religious or not.
Agreed. Yeah.
I read his book, Communicating for a Change. I think it's phenomenal, the way he does it. And it seems like they're really intentional about it. Like as someone who used to work there, was on staff there, and has been involved with North Point, do you feel like that idea of storytelling was emphasized at North Point? Like on the back end, I'm not involved in, staff. I haven't seen the inside, but as a customer per se, it seems like that's a key part of communication. Is that something that you learned at North Point and have taken with you? Like what's the involvement of, I guess, what kind of impact did North Point have on what you're doing now in your business?
Yeah, it had all the impact, I would say. So I learned, first of all, communication through Andy, I would say, just watching him at first and then getting to work closely with him for a while. And matter of fact, is what brought me to Story Brand. So back in 2018, when Donald Miller had first written Building a Story Brand, he came to North Point and did a training with us, and we continued on like reading the book all together. And I was actually working directly with Andy at the time. So in some ways I kind of got to go through that with him, because we would start our creative meetings with kind of recapping the last chapter and pulling out what we could. I think we were doing like a chapter a week or something. After we did the training, or maybe it was before, I can't remember the order, but yeah, so that's what got me in. So they were so invested in story that they invested in their staff getting into Story Brand. The full staff, but in particular, people who were doing a lot of Story Brand or a lot of storytelling from stage, and for whatever it was, if it's a new campaign, a building campaign, or just even generally just getting up. I mean, every week we would really try to look, whether it was the announcements, whatever communication, social media was coming from stage or through the web, very intentional about the stories that we were telling. So that was absolutely the kickoff to my storytelling adventure. Well, I say the kickoff. I came there through as a musician.
Yeah.
So I was the music director and then moved into digital media, but I stayed over music the whole time doing that. So I mean, music, of course, is stories. Every song's a stories.
Yeah.
So those are kind of my two things that I credit with getting me into studying storytelling, at least. I mean, for a while you're just consuming it and trying to recreate it, and then you start to try and break down the building blocks of how it actually comes together and how you can, kind of, because I think in doing this kind of stuff, you can have some hits accidentally. Then you want to work on how can you reproduce the catalyst that helped that happen, so I think that's the big part of North Point. I mean, they have they call it a funnel method for services, where they start out with as wide of something that you can get, that everybody's going to know, whether it's a song or somebody getting up and talking about the football game over the weekend and for Georgia or Falcons or whatever. So they start out just trying to create some common ground with everyone, and then funnel it down into the message to something that's going to be a really specific takeaway. So every point along that funnel is something that we would try to really work on and try to make it very intentional, at least, so again, just trying to recreate the magic as much as you possibly can. So that was my intro to storytelling and my life as a storyteller for quite a while.
You said a few cool nuggets there. One, I want to come back to like music being storytelling, because that's interesting. Something you said, like having a success and not being able to figure out like how it happened. I think accidental success is one of the most dangerous things that can happen to anyone or any business, because if you can't replicate it, I think that's just huge. I'm like, you kind of mentioned that in passing, and I'm like, oh, it's so good. So you studied storytelling. Who do you think are some of the best storytellers in the world?
I'm going to, I hate to bring this one up because he just got into some trouble recently, but my favorite, so I like to read a lot. I don't read a lot of fiction, but I love reading fiction when I can find something good, but I start a lot and don't keep going. But the first one I would say, this is the guy that was in some trouble recently, is Neil Gaiman. So I don't know if you've ever heard.
No.
Fantastic. I got into him through Tim Ferriss, who you probably know.
Yeah.
Podcaster guru. And
Work week.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Which is something I need to probably reread right now. But I got into him. He wrote, the first book I read by him was a book called The Graveyard Book. And it was about this kid who was basically a baby. I don't remember the age he would have been, but a small kid, toddler, that as all, good stories start in this world of kids fiction or fiction that's geared towards kids. His parents get killed, and he, on the night it happens, wanders into this graveyard, and he's like adopted by all of the ghosts of this graveyard in London. So they all like kind of take him in and teach him different lessons, but the ghosts go all the way back to like Roman times, so it's giving you all these really fascinating perspectives of, lessons from their time and their plays or whatever. So I love that one. I love Stephen King, and I read his book on writing, which is fantastic. It's funny because I'm not like a scary movie guy, but I will read scary stuff. I like doing that. So, or at least Stephen King. Some people are probably like, oh, that's not that scary, but for me it is. And so I love his writing. And then outside of that, I mean, honestly, I rewatch the Lord of the Rings movies or read the books probably once per year. So huge fan of Tolkien. And I really like him because the level of depth that he goes into. Do you nerd out on this at all?
So I was going to say, I'm a big C.S. Lewis fan.
Mm-hmm.
I respect J.K. Tolkien. I've never read the books. I've watched Lord of the Rings once. I've never seen The Hobbit. It is on my reading list. It's on my shelf. I have them.
Right.
Never read them.
Right. They are. So I think I've read most everything from that. And what I love though about it is he wrote The Hobbit, then he wrote all three of the Lord of the Rings books, the, trilogy or whatever. And, he'll say things kind of in passing in those books, but there's a level of depth that you can tell that he's went into. I mean, he was a linguist, so he invented the languages that they speak, and they like, it's so fascinating. I've even listened to some podcasts that go in and break down like people who study this academically, like the way he created these languages and all the stories like behind even just passing characters. He later went back and compiled those in a bunch of other, I'll probably get this wrong because I'm not as into it as some people, but he wrote all these other books that have all these other stories, and they have genealogies in them. And I mean, it's almost like reading the Bible in some ways, because it just goes through all this stuff and all these ages they pass through. And just, I mean, so I like that because I like to think about not letting any detail go without having some type of depth behind it, whether it's what you're putting behind you in a video shoot and obviously what you're talking about, but trying to just increase the level of depth behind the stories that you're telling. Because I think it comes across, even before he had those books, you could tell like, wow, there's a history here that he's alluding to that would be fascinating to know more about, that kind of thing. So so anyway, those are probably my three favorites off the top of my head.
I want to come back to this. What about a musician? Do you feel like a musician that's a great storyteller?
I'm going to go with my two favorite bands are the Beatles and the Eagles. And I'm on a Beatles kick right now, once again, because I'm going to see Paul McCartney in November, which is kind of like a bucket
Amazing.
list thing for him, or for me to go see him. And I'm so excited about that. So, yeah, I think, the storytelling that both those bands did in their songs, like full songs that just, are stories. And I said Beatles, but I'm thinking about right now, just because it's a full story the whole way through, like Hotel California by the Eagles. Creepy aspect to it, and it's a song that shouldn't make sense now because it's so long and it's got all these guitar solos, but it just evokes so many different feelings as you're listening to it, musically. And I feel like the music and the lyrics just line up perfectly. But it's a story, from start to end. And so I've always been obsessed with those. And I like a lot of country artists too. And the reason I really like country is because there's a lot of that storytelling. So I'm a mandolin player, and I still play mandolin kind of as a side gig.
Yeah.
And so I've been going through and learning some old like fiddle tunes. So I got on to Devil Went Down to Georgia, another one that's just where did this come
Full
from?
story.
This idea that, this full story that, the devil is a fiddle player and he shows up in Georgia and finds little Johnny, playing and it's just a whole story with this amazing playing in it. So I love putting together. And I think that's what I look for in a lot of the work that we do, is both those two songs that I just mentioned are technical wizardry. I mean, the musicianship, the guitar solos on Hotel California, the fiddle play. Oh, the reason I got into mandolin and fiddle are the same, by the way. It's like the same.
Okay.
So if you learn fiddle tunes on mandolin, it's kind of a fun thing to do because there's so many great ones. And so I've been learning that just kind of for fun. And anyway, but I love that they bring together the technical with the storytelling. And to me, that's where magic can really happen, especially kind of in this digital age where there's so many stories out there. I think you can stand out if you can put those two things together. So for us, on the video side, like we want everything to look beautiful, but we would never do it sacrificing the story. Obviously, the story comes first, so because if you take those songs, you could sit there and play them with an acoustic guitar and everybody's still going to love it, but then when you put it all together, it's kind of a masterpiece, in and of itself. So
that's fascinating. So when I think about storytellers, what's funny is I didn't think about any authors. And then as you were talking, I was like, I need to write down some authors that I think are great.
Who did you have? What did you think?
So I recently read Harry Potter for the first time.
Yes, I do love
it. And J.K. Rowling's excellent. Agatha Christie. I don't know if you're into murder mystery. I mean,
I have wanted to read her. Yeah.
So I've read the first 6 Poirot novels, and then There Were None, which is like one of her famous ones.
Okay.
That's probably the best mystery I've read, is And Then There Were None. C.S. Lewis, I wrote down. Same thing of like the details he leaves in the Narnia story, especially.
Yeah.
Modern one, Suzanne Collins. You know who she is?
No.
The Hunger Games.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Of course. I've seen the movies. I've never read the books.
So the 5th book just came out, Sunrise on the Reaping. It is the best book in my opinion.
Really?
And the movie's coming out next year. The cast is phenomenal. Free ad for Sunrise on the Reaping. Excellent.
So is it in that same world as Hunger Games or okay?
So it is a prequel. It is Haymitch's Hunger Games.
Right.
So Woody Harrelson's character from the first movies, it is the 50th Hunger Games. Wow. It's his Hunger Games. It is phenomenal.
Okay. I'm excited about that. I need to read those books for sure. That's a great call.
But then as you talked, I'm like, I think about a company a lot. This with our world, I'm like, I think about storytelling, and I think about a company who does it well a lot. And it's Disney. I'm a big Disney fan, and I just think you talk about, so when I was a kid, I wanted to be an Imagineer. I actually had a guest on this podcast a few weeks ago, Lou Mangello, who has the longest run Disney podcast. He's been doing it since like 2005, and he's made a lot of connections with Imagineers and his people who work at Disney. But I wanted to be an Imagineer when I was a kid. I listened to Lou's podcasts in middle and high school and have continued to, because I was just fascinated with this idea that there's people who are so into the details where like these rides, these attractions, like have a story, like the Haunted Mansion, right? Like, and I'll say Disney used to do this a lot better in that they had original storylines for attractions and not IP based attractions, where there's little things where it's like, there's an engagement ring that is like in the concrete in the queue line, thousands of people walk by every day and like don't even notice, but it was put there for a reason. If you ask a cast member about the engagement ring outside, in the cement, there's a story behind it. And this idea that like, sometimes it's stuff that no one ever notices, but there's a story behind it and it's there with the purpose. And I think to your point about like this mixing the technical and these details with story being so important, especially on the video side. And an area where I saw this was when I worked for Chick-fil-A. We brought in, I forget which vendor made the video, but we were doing a product shoot for a new product, and I was a hand model in the shoot. First and only time I'll probably do that in my life.
Yeah.
Got my only ever manicure. And something they did was they had all this kitchen equipment behind the shot, really, really close up shot of like, I sprinkled like nuts on this salad or something. And then they did
Tell
chicken
your
sandwich
form
stuff.
is,
But yeah,
I
I
can
worked
tell.
on it. And we had like a chicken sandwich shoot and stuff like that, but really, really close up. In the background, they had all this kitchen equipment that they were shining all these lights on. And I'm like, what's the point? Like, you can't even see it. And they're like, hey, Chick-fil-A's brand is bright. And so every shoot we do has to be bright. We can't have darkness behind it. That's not a part of Chick-fil-A's brand. When you think of Chick-fil-A, you think about bright and happy and, clean, white. And so they had all this stainless steel kitchen equipment that they were just shining lights off of. And in the final shot, you can't tell what's behind it. You can't tell that it's like a fry basket or a breading basket and stuff like that. But it just looks really bright behind the shot. And I'm like, wow, like you guys took, to me, that's storytelling, right? Of like, as a part of Chick-fil-A's brand is it's this bright brand that you think of like clean, white, bright, like colors. And so as a part of a detail in this photo shoot, they had to be bright in the background. And so I think it's really fascinating, this idea of like mixing storytelling with technical detail. And it sounds like you'll do that really well at Tree City Creative too.
That is what we, pride ourselves on, at least.
Yeah.
So trying to think through all the details and then kind of bringing that funnel thing back, of doing something early on that kind of connects with everyone. So I have an example from a recent shoot that we did where we're working with this company. They trade metal all over the world.
Okay.
And I often push for doing shoots not in an office, because a lot of you want to, especially now, like so much happens from the house. And so what we did is we went in and got an Airbnb, and we did 2 different sets in the Airbnb. That way we could kind of change it up throughout the day. But same thing, it was bright, open. We lit it up, really well as well. But then, starting out, I wanted to start with them talking. I did interviews all day with their leadership. And I wanted to start with just kind of what attracted their people to the recycling business, because that's something that does affect us all. So, kind of going in with that funnel, let's make a broad sweeping thing, just so people will have some buy-in of like, oh, these people have some passion behind what they do, and then, they're more likely to listen to the next thing when they get into the technical details of their facilities and how they, are able to get the technology they use to get the most back when they are getting aluminum, so it's pervasive, when you kind of have that mentality, I guess you kind of look for those opportunities. So that's something that I am a big believer in. So on some level, trying to kind of use some of these elements of all the stuff that we're both into as North Point people and story brand people and fiction fan people. It's just there's always something you can do to try to use at least one of those elements to tell a better story.
Yeah, that's cool. I think like bringing this to maybe a business owner or leader that's listening, you've gotten to work with both Fortune 500 companies and also these great purpose-driven nonprofits.
Yes.
And I see the similarity in that I'm like, you need the same thing. You need good marketing, and good marketing is good storytelling. And either you're trying to do it for profit to make sales, or you're trying to do it for donations, right? Or
Right.
for volunteers or increasing hours, whatever. What do you think that both these Fortune 500 businesses or for-profit businesses and nonprofits could learn from each other when it comes to marketing and storytelling?
I think the fascinating thing that I have found with nonprofits and all the years, because at North Point, we also had a lot of partners that we worked with, and I'm kind of like an advisory board. So I've been able to work with nonprofits for so many years now. And I honestly think that there's a lot that you can bring from nonprofit world to the corporate side, is what I've found a lot, because the storytelling in the nonprofit world is kind of the product for the donors, so they want to hear the stories of the successes that their money has helped to facilitate for people. So you swap out the only difference in it is, I think, is that you swap out when story brand, we try to say really customer on focus, making them the hero of the story. So in the nonprofit world, the clients of the nonprofit are kind of the customer most of the time when we're telling the story.
Right.
Sometimes we'll do stuff talking directly to the donors who are obviously, can slide into that customer role.
Right.
But it's being intentional with the storytelling, because I think a lot of corporations their salespeople often, I think, have great stories that they're going and telling. I think they haven't always translated those over to digital media in whatever.
Right.
So I've actually kind of done it in the reverse, where we have done so much storytelling with nonprofits that I am taking a lot of those things that I've learned from that side of things, where to me, it's almost pure storytelling. Like you're telling these stories. That is kind of the product in a lot of ways. And then trying to figure out how to translate that over to, like we were talking about earlier, a metal recycling company. How are they connecting with a broad audience and telling their story in a way that is a wide funnel at the top and then gets people into why they would want to work with them. So I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
That's kind of the way that I think about it. But that's been my journey with the way that I've done it, I guess.
Something that I've struggled with in the past is I am Mr. Attention to Detail. Like, even as like a team leader in the restaurant at Chick-fil-A, I found out I found the brand kit on our internal website.
Yes.
And the font at the time was Cecilia was the font. Now Chick-fil-A uses Aperçu as like the primary font. And I mean, the hex code for Chick-fil-A's red, which I think is PMS 131, but it's DD. It's DD0031 because I would type it into Adobe all the time. It was like the official Chick-fil-A red hex code. I'm obsessed with detailed stuff like that. I think that there's two sides of the spectrum, right? There's people that are like that, of like, this has to look good. So I think the creative side, right, of like, this needs to look good in marketing. Then I think there's the strategic side of, well, it's got to tell a cohesive story, right? It's like, this ad can look phenomenal, but if the content's not good, it doesn't really matter. And then there's the people that are like, well, the content's really good, who cares how it looks? How do you balance those well? Because, especially in the video world, you do video-led marketing, you do a lot of video stuff, or even graphic stuff, even, maybe website stuff.
Yeah, all of it, yep.
How do you strike that balance of, this content needs to be great, this creative side of wanting to make it look good? How do you balance those two things well?
Yeah, I think the one, so I try and have a hierarchy, so what we were talking about, Hotel California works as an acoustic song just as well. So it doesn't have to have all the production. You can just sit there with an acoustic and everybody's love it. So you start there and then build out as much as you possibly can. And there's still, there are sets that we come on to or flying to something or whatever, and there's only so much we can do. So it's trying to pack as much punch as you can on the technical side. And then sometimes we have everything. We can bring everything we have. We'll bring a trailer full of, gear to do something. So I think, to me, it's all about prioritizing, and for me, I'm kind of a generalist between all of these. I've sat on the content teams, and I've made the stuff myself and still do a lot. I do graphics and animations, all that. And, I try to get some help with that too. I try to know where I could use the most help. But yeah, to me, it's bringing them together by realizing, okay, how much time do we have? Let's first make sure the content's great. How much budget do we have? How can we pack as much punch? So you just climb the ladder of technicality, I guess, as you have time for it. And I think the reason behind that, is if your content's great, yes, it's going to, that's the most bang for the buck that you can ever get. But if you want to grab people who maybe are not into what you're doing, if they see something that looks really good come across their feed or pop up in their, in their inbox or whatever, it may spark that initial piece of, that initial curiosity that will then help them to engage with the content more, because like, wow, this looks this is a serious brand. This is someone who's, put some, so I think it's that. So the content is king. But after that, we try to go as far as we can into the technical side of it. It's just like with, again, back to the music thing. They probably didn't start Hotel California with the guitar solos. Those came after. So they had a great song. And then they're like, wow, this riff will absolutely kill on this. And it did, so it just made it all better. But it just makes it better and better and better. But you start from the content. So that's the way I think about it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like, there's definitely a hierarchy. Content's got to be good, but why not have both? Focus on one first, but
Yes.
the guitar solo is going to make it killer. It's like that's going to make it an icon.
Yes.
Kind of wrapping up here, like, yeah, I know you're really into music. You said the Beatles. I'm into the Beatles. I do not have as big of a repertoire. I have friends who are very musical, and I respect it. What do you think of one of the best storytelling songs the Beatles ever did?
That's a great question. Now I'm trying to run through all of the. I mean, I really, really love Hey Jude.
Oh, I love it.
Because it started as the story of when John was kind of leaving his family, was the beginning of that, because originally it was, hey, what's his son's name? Jules. It was Hey Jules, because it's Julian and they called him Jules. So it started as that and then went out, but then it became such a universal thing that so many people identify with. And then again, the playing on it's great. The riff that everybody can sing, the la da 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 da. Yeah, I mean, it's just such a classic song, and it's a cool story that started very specific, but became universal as he kind of kept writing on it and filling in the details. So I really love that one. I really love Blackbird. Sorry, I just had to throw that one in. And then of course Yesterday. I mean, Yesterday is so probably those three. I think I can't. Sorry, I couldn't do just one, but
that's okay.
I won't expand on those. But
it's funny. I recently listened to or watched a YouTube video or something on. My wife is telling me the Dreams album that Fleetwood Mac did.
Yes,
I had no idea what was going on with that band as they made that album, and that it's a bunch of diss tracks written to each other.
I did not.
Oh, it's fascinating. Like, I think Apple Music did a little hit on. They ranked like the top 100 best albums of all time, which their number one's ridiculous, by the way. But they did a little thing on just like the story behind the album, and I had to go dig further into it. Then I'm reading the lyrics of these songs, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is all just like writing to one another in one of the best albums ever.
I did know there was conflict, but I didn't know that album was based on conflict.
Yeah, and then you turn out to be one of probably their best album, one of the best albums ever, in my opinion. Fascinating. I love that you connected music and storytelling. It's not somewhere I thought we were going to go today, but I'm glad we did.
Well, that's how I got started in the creative world. So it's kind of where most of my examples come from, I guess. And, it's funny you're talking about that, because that's one thing I think is actually common with bands, at least, is there has to be a certain amount of tension. And it's almost like the tension that you were talking about between content and technicality, technical perfection. And you see that in so many of those bands. John and
Abbey Road. I mean, the whole album is like let's do this one last time.
Right. Yes. And so, but it's interesting because, I mean, they were all successful in their own right after, but never to the level that the Beatles were. And I think it was because I think you have to have that creative tension somewhere and between something, and it really helps, I don't want to say pressure makes diamonds, but it's like, but I did just say it, but there is something to that. So you always have to have tensions on either side and figure out, the middle path between them and which side you're going to lean to more and all that. So there's so many lessons that you can learn from any creative endeavors, from other people that have done it, from stuff that you do. So I just try to think about all that stuff a lot. And now I'm going to definitely be back in on that Fleetwood Mac album.
Yeah. And something too, you kind of sprinkled in there. I think the band aspect, I think it's about teams. And this is why I love football so much. I think football is the greatest team sport in the world. You might disagree with me on that. You might think English football is the best team sport in the world, but
I do love soccer.
I just know growing up, like how many life lessons I learned playing team sports.
Yes.
And that tension, you hear stories of locker rooms where it's like, it is unbelievable they accomplished that when that was going on in the locker room. Or, wow, why didn't that team win something? Look how stacked they looked. And it's like, oh, well, you had no idea that as talented as they were, that locker room was just fractured. And like that tension can lead to when you work it out can lead to greatness, and when it doesn't can make you crumble too, which I think is that's why I love sports, man. I think you can learn a lot of lessons from team sports.
And there's always some tension in a locker room.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I remember, I think it was I'm a big Freakonomics fan. I love both the two guys who wrote there. I listened to their podcast, but one of them had on one of the statisticians from Liverpool.
Okay.
At one point, and they're very stats driven, all type of team, or at least they were. So he's like a PhD in statistics, whatever. And he was saying the greatest lesson that he learned is if you've got that kind of mercurial player who just is kind of hard to get along with, and people, some people don't like him, he's divisive, whatever. Figure out how to do it, because it can often pay off if they're great, So I think that's it. It hit home with me because I think that's true, like in so many creative realms. It's like figuring out how to get along with a bunch of different people to accomplish a goal, whether it's a sport or music. I mean, there's so many things that just cross over from one thing to the next. So I don't see a lot of boundaries between anything, music, video, sports. I mean, it's all people, and it's all figuring out how to work together, overcome disagreements, live in them, live with that tension, and it may actually make the product better from having some of that, I think.
It's all people. I mean, look, Phil Jackson, sometimes you got to let Dennis Rodman go party in Vegas and send Michael Jordan to go get him to go win a championship.
Yeah, and that's exactly that Liverpool. Yeah, they kind of seemed like he was like the attack dog, and they just let him kind of run that locker room with discipline and whatnot.
If we could sum our time together and have one takeaway from the episode, what would you want it to be?
I think for me, the great thing about storytelling is it's meant to be fun, and it's meant to lose yourself in a world. And also the creative process should be like that, So for us, when we're doing stuff, I mean, the biggest thing that we try to do when we're on a set and we're trying to get, a lot of it is again, talking about the content. A big part of that is how people come across on camera. Yeah. And that doesn't happen without having some fun. So I think just whatever you're doing, dive into the story side of it, have fun with it, and just make cool stuff. I think that's, and even the tension part of what we were talking about, lean into those things, just realize there's an end date on this project, but try to have as much fun with it as you can, because so much of our world is storytelling, which should mean we all get to have, I think, some fun getting to put these stories together. And that's kind of what I try to do on my best days, at least. I mean, I have my moments, of course, but yeah, just have fun with telling stories and lean into whatever tensions arise as you're doing it, and realize it's part of the process.
I love it. Drew, where can people connect with you, work with you, find you?
So I am on most social media, I guess. We do a podcast as well called the Tree City Growth Cast.
Yeah.
Check that out. It's on YouTube primarily right now. And then Tree City Creative, you search that, it'll come up, and there's, you can get in touch with me through that. And yeah, Tree City Creative pretty much for everything on social media. And then I think on most stuff, I'm Andrew Amerson. So if you look me up on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever, it's Andrew. So
I love it. Andrew, thanks so much for being on the Waves Business Coaching Podcast, and thank you to our audience for watching and listening to this episode.
And thanks so much for doing what you do, Jacob. I know I got to talk to you about it a lot when you came down for the podcast, but I love how much thought you've put into mastering your first job, of course, because that's the name of the book, but your first few jobs, and using those as a pathway to success and trying to learn as many lessons as you can from it. And I had such a blast getting to talk to you about that. And I just appreciate you having me on.
I really appreciate it. Appreciate the time, and hope everyone has a great week. Take care.